Right, your turn, Rianna.
All right, thank you so much. Hello, everybody. My name is Rianna Dearden. I am the writing lead at Charisma.ai. Charisma.ai is a company that does all sorts of interactive stories, from interactive graphic novels to interactive TV shows to interactive live theatre. We do a bunch of stuff. And we have created a platform where you can create your own interactive graphic novels and publish them directly onto our own Charisma app. Now, if you were to go onto the Charisma app now and download it, which I'd really, really recommend doing, you'd see on there like a load of interactive graphic novels, some of them running up to like an hour and a half in different episodes. You'll see a load of short mini games that are just a few minutes long, just a single scenario, and you'll see other things that are in between. So we create in-house stories. We created all the interactive graphic novels on there, but we also open up our platform for anybody to create, how we were just talking now, whether it's called a creator, writer, maker, whatever it is, you can create your stories for free and publish them directly into the app for people to read and for you to share across. Now, how you make them, it's a no-code tool. It uses a node-based system, which you might have seen in other engines, and we will go through that today. But the thing that you can make with it is quite broad. If you imagine any imagery and characters and the player interacting with it via text. So on the mobile app, the player will interact via writing on your phone in a text box or speaking directly to your phone. You can do either way. So I'm going to show you some examples of some of the things we've already made, some of the things that our community have made as well. And so I'm just going to share my screen to go through some of that now. So you should be able to see this screen now. So here we've got some of our characters here on the screen on the right hand side. These are all our characters from our interactive graphic novels. So these were adapted from existing graphic novels. We took the imagery, we got a illustrator to edit them for our interactive stories, where you can change the plot of the story, you can develop relationships with the characters, you can be best friends with them, you can annoy them, and that might change how the story unfolds. These are my details here. If anybody wants to get in touch at the end, I can share them as well. I'm Rianna at Charisma.ai, that's my email, and at Rianna Dearden on Twitter. I'll also be on the Discord server at any time if anybody wants to ask any questions that come up during your process with this. So please don't be shy, ask questions. So I'm just going to share this video here, which is showing one of our interactive graphic novels and what it looks like behind the scenes, what the graph looks like. And we call our workspace a graph and the nodes. So on the left-hand side, you've got the phone there. That's what the speech bubbles look like. The imagery on the phone, and the player is, in this example, tapping through to get the next lines of dialogue. On the right hand side, you've got the nodes where you decide what the player says and what the character says, and it kind of works its way through all of those. You see they're linked up there. Depending on what the player says, it will take it to the specific node that the writer has decided upon. And you can see there that the keyboard pops up, the player interacts via replying to the characters. And the character dialogue always appears like this speech bubble on the left-hand side that you can see there. You can move them around, you can change the shape and stuff. We'll go through all of that later on. So this imagery was adapted from a graphic novel, but we'll go through later on as well how to create your own imagery, how to create your own characters, what sort of things you can do. You could draw your own, you can use our character creator and only our character creator, or you could go for something much more simple, and I'll show you some examples as well. Okay, so that's that one. And we've got another video here which will just introduce you to a bit of the platform. It's like a trailer for the platform and how to build stories. So I'll just let this one play. Okay, so that's that one. So these are some of the images that we've had from our community stories. So on this one on the left-hand side, that is an image that's been passed through an online cartoonizer. So they've taken an image, a royalty-free image, put it through the cartoonizer and then edited it slightly for that. The second one along is an image of just a reflection on a window. It's had no processing done to it. That story was all done with just photos and stuff, which worked really, really nicely. Third one along, someone's drawn their own. Fourth one along, that's using our character creator that somebody has then edited a mask on top of it, again with a cartoonizer-like background, on top of one of our included backgrounds that we have. So that's just an example of like how people are already making their own images for things. You don't need, you know, you don't need to be an amazing illustrator or creator to do that if that isn't your thing. Stories really work with like the most basic sort of backgrounds and characters and stuff. You can do anything. Here in the middle is some of our interactive graphic novels, what they look like. On the left here, we've got an animated GIF from our story called Joy Bunker, which is live on the app now. You can play that, and that's like a layer on top of the images that you can add. So you can also add a bit of movement as well to your images. That's just a transparent GIF laid on top of a still image that you can use. So hopefully that gives you a good sort of idea of what the kind of things you can make in Charisma are. I would really, really recommend going onto the app and having a look at all the stuff there. I think I posted the link in the chat, which is great. As I say, there's loads of like really long form stories, and there's the series called Shorts, which is, you know, really short, like 2 minutes max at some of the stories. So have a look on there whilst you're making your stories, because it should give you a really good idea of like the really different types of stories that you can make. So I am now going to take you through how to create the template. So what I've done is I made a template specifically for Elevate, which has got a load of examples in it of graphs that are already made up. So you can either just, you know, go in and edit the text, or you can create a brand new story from scratch once you've had a look and seen what it's like, whatever is up for you. So I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, so you should be able to see that now. So here we have the Charisma homepage. So when you get to the home page, you're going to want to create an account. Now, I'm already logged in here, so you can see my little picture there. But if you haven't already created an account, you just want to click on there and click login and create an account. Once you have created an account, you can click on your avatar there and go to your stories page. This is my stories page, lots of stories on there, obviously. But what it will look like for you when you start is it will just have this create new app story, this pinky purple kind of square here, and you want to click on that and create new story. Now, we're going to give our story a title, but you can change this at any time. So you can call it anything you want for now. I'll just call it Elevate. This is Elevate. Genres, you want to pick a genre. Again, you can change this later on, so it doesn't matter. And then to access the Elevate template, you want to click this little password here and enter the password, which is Elevate 2021 exclamation mark, and then click create story. So this has just created a brand new story that is started from the Elevate template. So this is yours. You can edit it as much as you want. You can completely delete it. You can change anything you want with it. You can also create this template as many times as you like. So on that home page, you can just keep creating these if you want to create multiple versions. This story overview page is where you can change these things like title, description, genres. So if you wanted to change that, you just change it and update story details. You can also give your story a cover image, which will be vital when it comes to publishing it, because that's what it will appear as on the home screen of the app. You can also here add collaborators. So if you've got somebody who you want to share your story with, you can add their Charisma username in here and choose whether they view, edit or manage, and then invite them to collaborate. They'll then get an invite in their email and on their home screen for Charisma, and they can accept that. Then they'd have access to your story as well. So we'll just now work through this template and go through everything that's in there and how to kind of get to grips with the graph and stuff. So we'll start with this welcome to the graph page. This is the graph, this green space. This is what I'm referring to when I say graph a million times. These here are just some comment notes to give you a few starting tips for how to use the space and stuff. Now, if you look on this left-hand side, on this menu, we've got a list of characters here. These are ones that I've put in that are blank at the moment. They're just called character 1, 2, 3, 4 and a waiter. And you can either add a new character, or using these 3 dots here, you can edit these characters. So let's just add a character. Let's call it Rianna. Biography. Don't think we need to do that. And I could choose a name. So Emma, British English. This is, sorry, choose a voice. This is a voice. So if you have the voices turned on in your story, these are some generic voices that you could use. They sound a bit like this. Maybe you can hear this.
Will I be the voice for your character?
Yes, you will. And you can change the pitch, rate, volume there and test it there. Then if you flip the card, you can edit their personality from the get-go. Now, this would be what their emotional state is at the beginning. So you can start them off. So I'll start myself off nice and happy, calm-ish, trusting, very patient, and very brave. And we create that. And Rianna has come to life, and then Rianna is there. Now, if we look at our first scene of examples. So these are the nodes, all these little squares here, and they're joined up from one to the other. In this scene, the player will start at this graph entry node, and they always start at the graph entry node. They will get taken through down to this character node where it says Sourdough Pizza Planet. They'll then automatically be taken onto this node, and so on. these green nodes here, this one where it says character 1 is what we call a character node. This here is what the character says, it's their dialogue. And that's how you move between stories. So if I wanted to change that character, I could, I could make Rianna say that there, change it like that. Keep it character 1 for now. And then these blue nodes here are where we are trying to predict what the player is going to say. So as shown in the video earlier, they can say anything they want. They just get given an open keyboard and they can type whatever they want. So here is where the AI bit of Charisma comes in. So Charisma uses natural language processing to decipher what the player has said and uses these player nodes to send them down the right path. So if we look at this one here, hi, hello, howdy, character 1 will say hi back. And that's how I've chosen. I've written in all of these things. And the natural language processing takes a match of all of them. So anything that sort of means hi, so hiya or hey there, would be picked up by this player node and sent down this path. And then you add as many as you like that mean different things. So is that your real name? This would pick up all kind of variations of that sort of sentence, of that meaning. And then character 1 will say, I promise you that is my real name. So with all of this, I'm going to go into it in kind of a surface level detail here. But the point is to not get too caught up on this natural language processing and AI. You'll get a sense for how things work and how those player nodes work by playing with them, by testing, and by looking at the stuff that's already in the graph. So these character nodes here, you can move them around. If you wanted to edit straight into this template, you can just double click on that. You can delete that. You could even just delete that whole node by pressing delete. The important thing is you always want to make sure there are no dead ends like this here on this character 1 node. If there's no dead ends, you want to click on this connector here and drag it and move it along. This node here is just a pass-through node. It doesn't really do anything other than bringing all of these together and then bringing it to one point, and then it will move it on to the next part of the story. If you want to create any nodes, if you want to create any nodes at all, what you want to do is double click on the graph, anywhere on the blank graph, and you can create a character node. That's a character node. You can create a player node, and then you'd join them up like so. You can create one of those pass-through nodes if you wanted to do that. And that's all pretty self-explanatory. That we'll go through some of these nodes a bit later. So also on this player node here that we should go into. So as I said earlier about hi, hey, all those sorts of things, what you can also do is click this use intents. So if you click that, these 6 options come up, and this thumbs up one, let's say if we select that, would pick up anything that means yes, okay, sure, good thing. It's like a massive database of things that mean that mean thumbs up, thumbs down, confused, don't care, compliment, insult. And it's a shortcut so that you don't have to put in all of those, so that every single time you don't have to put in yes, okay, sure. So we've got these inbuilt. Insult is a really common one because people often come into these stories and instantly want to be like, who the are you? And they want to like test the platform and test to see what is possible. And so they often insult the characters. And so you might put that there, put that player node, click the insult thing, and then put a response. So if we create a node, character node, and then you say, how dare you? Or you could insult them back, should you wish. So those are the intents on the player nodes. I'll just show you this next scene. It's how are you? So this is a real basic how are you question. You'd think it was pretty straightforward, but it's a little bit more than just yes or no. So they might answer a thumbs up intent. You might be able to use that. You might have a thumbs down intent if they're having a really, really bad day. But actually, the question is quite expansive and it depends on the situation. So this is where being able to write your own player nodes really comes into its own. So they might come back straight away and say, how are you? In which case you want the character to answer with that. And they say, I'm excited, we've such a big day ahead of us. You might have specific situations like this, nervous, apprehensive, a bit scared. And you might want the character to respond to that specifically, rather than it just being a thumbs down. You might want it to ask, oh, a few butterflies in the stomach are normal in this situation. So this is where we can really create experiences that are specific to the player that is playing them. They're getting answers to their questions. It feels like they're being listened to. It's a lot more than a multiple choice decision branch or anything. It's a real personal experience. So this is what that whole kind of interaction looks like. You can see there are loads of answers here and player nodes. And then right at the bottom here, we've got this other node. It's called a wildcard. This wildcard node, you create it just like you create the other nodes, like that, double clicking on the graph and creating that. I'll delete that one, clicking backspace. What this wildcard node does is it accounts for everything that is not accounted for in those blue player nodes above. So inevitably, you cannot account for every single thing that a human could possibly say to an answer. You know, we've all got our own minds where we can say whatever we want, and people do. Also, they might just be off topic. They might be answering a question that the character asked them 10 minutes ago. Our minds work in very strange ways and bring up thoughts at completely random times. So this wildcard will catch that. It will mean that the story can still continue regardless of whether the player is trying to take it off track or if they've just thought of something that the writer in this case hasn't thought of, if they've come up with something that the player nodes haven't picked up. So that character response after that is pretty generic. It covers anything. You try and make it make sense no matter what the player could have said. In this case, it just says, I, for one, am excited. It brings the conversation back to how the character is feeling. Go on to this next scene here, defining the player role. This is just another section. You'll see that this is all character nodes. So this is just the character speaking. The waiter is there, so we've got multiple characters here. It's them speaking to each other. Now you might also notice that these nodes, these character nodes are dark green, whereas if you create a character node like this, they start off light green. And the difference between these is this here, tap to continue. So with this node in the mobile app, the player will have to tap on the screen to move the story forward. Whereas with this node, the light green one, because it hasn't got tap to continue selected, it will automatically go to the next node. So if I create another node and connect them up like that, the player will not have to do anything for this line of dialogue to go to this line of dialogue. It will automatically move on. Also, what will happen is the text box will be available at the bottom. So on a tap to continue, there is no text box. The player cannot interrupt at that time. They cannot interact with it at that time other than tapping to move forward. Whereas these, where there is no tap to continue on, the keyboard will be there. So if you have a player node and you were to connect it to, say, this node at the end here, we delete this connection. You can, again, just like the node, select it and press delete. If we were to do this, your story would break. because this is a tap to continue node, and so there is no keyboard. So there's no possible way that your player could say hi. They can't interact. What you need to do is turn that off so that the keyboard would come up, it'd go hi, connect that, and then it would move on. And then you'd add a wildcard. Like, I really recommend adding wildcards like all the time at every interaction, so that you know that the story can move forward. You can move that on. You could add other player nodes, whatever you needed in that interaction, that could happen there. So now we'll go on to this scene 5. What's your favourite? It's called. So this is another scene with loads of nodes in it. This is what the whole scene looks like. It's quite a heavy scene, but really this would take like 30 seconds to play. They always look quite complex, but the actual play time is really, really speedy. So let's zoom in on this a little bit here. We've got our character asking, what's your favourite sort of hat? We've got high drama here, absolute massive stakes. So what's your favourite sort of hat? Now I could, in a player node, put every single type of hat and list it under here in the player nodes so that it would take it to the next node. But instead what I've done is I've created a category, which is this, where it says hats in the angle brackets. And it's grayed out because it knows it's a category. Now, to create a category, if you go to your left-hand side menu and click on categories, I've made this category called hats, which is every type of hat I could think of. Like, yeah, I didn't think of all of them. I got them from Wikipedia. I copied it, but it's there if you need it. And we've got loads of other categories that we've put in this template for you as well. This basically, if we go back to this, what's your favourite question? Any of the hats that were listed in that category section would trigger this player node. So Trilby was in there, I just saw. So if somebody said after this, what's your favourite sort of hat? And they said Trilby, this player node where it says hats would be activated because of the category. Now, there's a lot of documentation about how categories work. There's a YouTube video about them as well. So don't worry if it doesn't quite all make sense at the moment. There's plenty where you can work it out. After you've done that category, what you might want to do is remember the hat that the player decided on that was their favourite. So you might want to later mention Trilby's or say, oh, your favourite hat was Trilby, and have the characters remember specific things about the player. Now, hats is just an example of what this can be used as, but you know, it could be used for so much. And we've got a few different types of memory in Charisma. The memory nodes are this orange node here. To create them, double click on the graph, create memory. And then you can either use a memory that has already been created, or you can create memory like this, which will bring up this dialog box. For this hats one, you want to choose a word memory because you just want to remember the word Trilby, and you connect it to that category, which is there. And so any categories that you make, you can add as many as you like on that categories page. They will come up in this list. So let's say hats, and I've already made it, so I'm not going to name it, but that's where you'd give it a name, create memory, and then it would look like this memory node here. And that saves it in Charisma's memory for it to be recalled at any point. And you recall it like this. So don't get me wrong, a hat choice would look great on you. So it gives you instructions here of how to recall it on the memory node, but essentially it's putting the name of the memory inside angle brackets within the character node dialogue there. So if it's been saved as Trilby, what this would actually read as is, don't get me wrong, a Trilby would look great on you, but I think we can do better. As I say, high drama here. So how memories might also work later is if, for example, a player has not been able to save a name of a hat. For example, if they've gone down this route, if they've said, I don't know, or I don't have a clue, or they don't want to answer that, they'd be taken through here and then follow the string up here. And then you can see that they've missed that memory there. So later on, if we want to recall the fact that they've chosen their hat memory, we don't want to run into a problem where that memory hasn't been saved. So what you can do is you can gate that off, and you can use gates in conjunction with memories to create different paths of your story depending on what has been saved. So let's create a gate, and I'll show you how that can sort of work. So these red nodes are gates, and you add conditions that need to be satisfied in order to pass through this gate. So if we were to add a condition and we're wanting to stop someone from being able to go through to the next part of the story if that memory hasn't been saved. So I want to choose a particular memory has been saved. And then we can select hat choice. That was the name of the memory. And so in order for the player to pass through this node, if it was, if it was connected up like that, in order for it to move onto a new character node, this condition would have to be satisfied. So hat choice must be set. So then in this node here, you can go on and talk about that hat choice without worrying about whether it's been set or not. Just delete those as we don't need them. Now the other kind of conditions you can add to a gate. A character must be in a certain mood. So that was like how I mentioned at the beginning about changing my character sliders. The mood can also be adjusted throughout the whole. So my mood was confident and a bit nervous, but say on this node I wanted to move it. I could choose a character and I can move those sliders. So say something has just happened and Rianna has got super angry, and then that would change that emotion. Then when it comes to the condition on the gate, character must be in a certain mood. So Rianna must be significantly angry in order to go onto this node, whatever it is, whatever that happens. That's one condition of a gate. You can delete the condition like that. We can also say a player has made a particular decision. This is, again, a different type of memory called a decision memory. A particular memory has been saved, we went through that one, and a counter memory that matches a comparison. So this one is like insult character 1. This is the memory I've got set up earlier, which is it counts how many times the player will insult character 1. And let's say it's equal to 3. So my player has insulted the character 3 times, and now, the character is going to be like, you know what, I'm not talking to you anymore, I'm done with you, go, I don't want to speak to you, whatever it is. That's how you could gate that off, so that would only happen once the insults have happened 3 times. So I'll just delete that. So that's memories and gates. There are video tutorials and a lot of documentation about all the different types of memories, how to use gates, and how that all works. There's links to those in the kit as well, and they're on the Charisma site. So now subplots. So I've put some subplots down here, and what's inside them are examples of structures. So we've got like a quiz, we've got a this way or that way, saving the player name, how to do that. But essentially the structure of subplots is used as either a different branch of a story that you might go down. For example, if the insult counter has reached 3, if the player has insulted the character 3 times, you might have a fail state where you put in a subplot, that conversation of character 1 being like, you know what, I'm done, I'm leaving, we're not having this conversation anymore. And that subplot can be entered at any time that that gate is triggered. What you've also got is a player triggered subplot. So right at the beginning of these subplots, the inside of subplots look exactly like the other graphs. They have a graph entry and a graph exit. But if I show you where one is used, so if we look here, this is a subplot node, and this is the first scene here that we were looking at earlier. So you come through this pass-through node, and then you would come through this save the player's name. Now I've just done this to tidy up the graph a little bit, because this save the player name scene is quite big and cumbersome. And so I've put it in its own subplot and then connected up the subplot node, which you create again, just like this, double click on the graph, and you can select the subplot that you want there. Connect both ends of it up and it all works through it. So this is a story triggered one where we're forcing it to go through that. But what you might get is this player triggered one. So if we look at the start of this. So this one starts with player nodes, meaning that at any point in the story, if a player says, "Are you real?" this player node and this subplot will trigger. And character one will give an answer. It will then move out of the subplot, go to the graph exit, and go back to the original scene where it was originally triggered. So no matter what scene you were in the whole story, it would trigger that. So now there are some conditions that you can add to this. So if you go on the subplot, hit these 3 dots here. You can rename it, you can duplicate it, delete it, etc. This is the important bit, edit conditions. So much like the gate conditions, you can edit when this might be triggered. And those are either the player is in or is not in a particular scene. So you may only want it to be possible to activate it in the first scene, for example. You can list the scene there, or the last character to speak was, etc. So those are conditions that you can add to make sure it can't quite be triggered all the time. But by default, if it is graph entry and then a player node, it could be triggered at any time. Those are really useful for the players that really want to like go off topic. Like they've asked you what your name is, but they say, "Hey, what did you have for breakfast?" Like you can cater for that if you want. And then it will go back to the original story so that it carries on. So I just want to give a quick overview of media as well. We've seen a bit of the character creator, but let's go back to this first scene. We've got this character node, "How are you?" And if we click on this media manager here, this will bring up where you can add your images. And we'll go through this in a little bit more detail in a second. I just want to show you where the character creator is. So it's on the left-hand side here. And you may have heard us talking at the beginning about it. It's a little bit like Sims. It's choosing your character's skin, hair, face, whatever you need. So, you know, trousers. You can change the colors of these like this. You can change his hair. Very nice, let's go for that. You can change the body base, color, you know, you get the picture. You can add tattoos, scars, all this sort of stuff. There's objects for, you know, if you have a story about a spatula, then yeah, we can cater for that. You can also change the positions. So you've got positions like this, crouch there. You can change where the eyes are looking at. If you look down here, I mean, it's still pretty self-explanatory, but you get the picture. Once you've created your character, say that that is our character and that's what we're going for. If you go back to this main menu here, this is the important bit where you can export to library. So if you export that image, it will then be saved in your media library. You can also save this character in a slot like that so that you can come back to it later. You can export as many times as you like. So you could change the position and export like that. And you can export as many characters as you like. But now, if we go back to our media and our media manager, oh no, wait, first, let's have a look in our media so we can see where it's been exported. So click media on the left-hand side, those are our 2 images there that got exported from the character. Now they have got transparent backgrounds so they can be put on any background. And we have some included backgrounds, loads of them. You can add your own backgrounds, you can add your own characters if you like, but we've just added some here in case it's useful. And you can add them to your library like that. That one's now been added to my library. And now we go to the media manager. And it's blank at the moment. On the right-hand side, this is a preview of what it will look like on your phone. And we want to just add those visuals in. So this visual section, add layer. And click on this one there to add your background. Some nice falling leaves. It's autumn-ish. Add another layer. And we will add our spatula man. Now, he's obviously really big at the moment and his head's being cut off. So what you need to do is you need to change this to contain. And then you can move it around by dragging it, and you can change the size by adjusting these little corner points here. So let's get Spatula Man in position. There he is, you can go there. And then this is the line of dialogue that we've got in our character node. So how are you? You can move this just like you can move that. You can do that all the way across. And you can add a bubble tail position. So I want it looking like it's coming from him, so bottom left. And there it's pointing like that. You can also use a few different types of bubbles. So we've got speech, which is this one, round edges. Narration, square edges, thought, and tech. Let's stick with speech for now. You can also change how this layer comes in or out, if it's fade or slide from left, etc., and how it goes out. And this is also where you add audio. So you can add tracks of audio that will be associated and triggered with this specific node. If you wanted to move this to this whole thing to another node, this copy and paste thing is really, really useful. So copy up there, you then exit, go to another node, let's say here, click on the media manager, paste, and it will paste the same thing. Now that's super useful because obviously you're going to have a load of nodes that want like the same imagery throughout. So once you've started building your graphs, or if you want to play through these graphs that already exist, it's really important to test, test, and test at every stage possible. So we've got this slide out test chat on the right-hand side. And what you can do is you can either click chat from start here, which will chat from the very first node, or you can select a node anywhere in your story and go chat from selected node. How are you? And then you can type through like this and play through the whole story. This next one comes up when it's a tap to continue. Within this, you can also change any of the memories. So if I wanted to set that hat choice there, because I'm testing from halfway through and I know there's a bit coming up where they're going to reference the memories, you can click that, set it to whatever you like. Now, if you want to test, so this version of testing will only show you the chat. It won't show you any imagery or anything. So if you want to see the imagery and what it looks like in the app, you can click this play in app and use this QR code to scan with your phone, and it will automatically open the app, the Charisma app on your phone, and it will play on your phone as if you were testing, as if you were playing the final product. For that, you need to have the Charisma app installed on your phone and you need to be logged in. But that will essentially give you like the full experience and allow you to see if there are any breaks in your story, or if there's any dead ends or any bit that it's breaking. So that is like a super brief touch on all of the Charisma tools, but there, as I keep saying, there's loads of documentation and loads of tutorials on our YouTube channel. The documentation can be found on the left-hand side there. There's a quick link to it there. And it's massive. You can get right into anything, bold and italics, everything. There's also on there some more example graphs. So you can see a different way of how things are working. So I'm gonna stop sharing now, and if there's any questions, now's the time to go ahead.
Thank you so much for that, Rianna. Yeah, please do put your questions in the Q&A section. This has been a very comprehensive tutorial. And from my end, I wanted to ask you, so all of this is for the story jam, and I wanted to thank you for putting the template together for us. I'm sure that it's going to come in very handy. How long did it take you to put it together?
The template?
Yeah.
Oh, well, a lot of it was stuff that I have already done in that I've created these sort of scenarios many times, because I've tried to include things that are like things like getting the player name. That's in most stories, so I can whiz through and do that really, really quickly because I do it most days. So it didn't take me long, like a day, but I would say it can take a lot longer than that when you're working out what you want your story to be. And it's often quite slow progress to start with whilst you're working out what the different things do. And, you know, when you start testing and things don't work, like that is completely normal. I still test and find things that don't work. And I'm like, why doesn't it work? And I rack my brains about it. It's usually something really, really simple, just a node in the wrong place, or it's just been connected up, or, you know, you can't see that it's not connected or something. It's usually really, really simple. So don't anyone get disheartened if your stories feel like they're not working, because that learning curve is quite steep to begin with. But then once you've got it, the expanse of stories that you can tell is massive.
So something else that I thought it would be worth mentioning is that as we're going to use Discord for the story jam in order to help everybody and to make sure that we encourage everybody to finish their games and to answer any other questions that they might have about the kits themselves. You mentioned that you might be available for some of the jam as well to answer questions around charisma.
Yes, yeah, definitely on Discord. And as well, it's worth mentioning Charisma's got our own Discord of writers that if you want to post something on there, either me or my colleagues or other writers will respond.
And that was the other thing. Yeah, so you do have a Discord if folks want to kind of like dive in and see more of the community that you put together, and also see what other types of questions people ask.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really useful resource there. There's a link to it right at the bottom of the kit on the Google Doc.
Yeah. So lastly, from my end is what was the story about? Like, what's the template story about?
There's no through line. I tried to make it so that each scene is like a structure that is useful, but the through line can be anything you want. There's obviously the bit about hats, but it's, you know, you're meeting a character, he's asking you what your favorite hat is. It's super basic, but hopefully it can be easily translated into whatever story you need.
We have a question from Delano, who asks, could you make a game with audio dialogue using the Charisma app?
Yeah, so what you can do is, so all characters will have their own voice that you set up, and you select a voice for them. And then when you play in the Charisma app, you just turn the voices on, and then it can be a full speech-to-speech experience if you wanted it to be. So you have the character voices on, so you use their inbuilt voices, and then with the keyboard microphone input, you can speak directly in it, and it will use speech to text to turn it into the text that it needs to be able to read what it says.
That's really cool. You seem to have quite a lot of voice types in there.
Yeah, there's loads. My favorite is the Welsh voice. It's very nice.
Well, I'll be sure to give that a listen. And from my end, I think there was just one more question. In the meantime, I'm just going to post the post-event survey in the chat to ask folks to fill it in and let us know what they thought about it. But first, question from Jez. Very impressive software, great to talk to. Have you ever played the game Facade?
No, I haven't.
Ah,
Where can I play it?
yes. Facade was one of the original pioneering NLP narrative adventures.
Oh, great.
I'm going to post the link in the chat for that as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah, really interesting. You attend the dinner, and then things might go horribly wrong or not, depending on what you say.
Love it.
And I think there's like research papers behind it as well. Looking back to what you were saying earlier about reading articles and interesting things about narrative fiction.
Oh, yeah.
Always do go wrong, advises Jez. Yeah. So the last question from my end was, what's one of the most impressive ways in which you've seen charisma used?
Do you know, one of the ones that really inspires me is one of the community stories that we've got, which uses like just sketches, like on just pictures of sketches of characters on papers. Because up until that point, we'd been doing a lot of interactive graphic novels and using a lot of illustrators and thinking that was kind of the only way forward, in that you always needed like good imagery. We'd created the character creator to kind of like help that. And then someone just came and made this story with like hand drawn, like just biro on or pencil on paper. And it just worked so well, like really stripping it back to almost no visuals, reusing the same ones again and again, but you didn't get bored of it. It stripped it back to just pure like interaction and pure game, and with nothing else kind of getting in the way. It was really nice. I really like that. I mean, there's also like massive, aside from the mobile app, the platform is also used for like big VR projects and integrated with Unity and Unreal and as conversation engines and stuff. And that's things that we work on the non-mobile side of our company. So that's always super inspiring and just like amazing to see where in the future like interactive games are going to go when you can speak directly to characters.
And they can speak back to you, talk back at you.
Yeah, they can get annoyed with you, and they can hate you or love you or ask you on a date, whatever. It's like whatever can happen is, the only limits of that are just the limits of the story and the limits of how much you can write.
That is really inspiring, and I think that's a good note to end on as well. So I see there are no other questions. I'm going to stop recording now. And yeah, thank you